What's going on? It's Jason Heath, and I did a crazy thing. I've been in touch over the last year or so with Susanna Klein, who teaches violin at Virginia Commonwealth University and has put out a practice journal called Practizma. And yes, it is a physical journal, and I have it right here, but it's more than that. It's a philosophy. It's a way of thinking about your playing that brings joy to what you do in music, and joy and bass not always in sync for me. Back in the mid-2000s, I was getting burned out of music. I'd taken almost 30 auditions. I was doing worse and worse at every audition. And I was just getting fed up, frankly, with what I felt to be a dead-end career. I went back to school to teach high school orchestra, and I actually did end up teaching high school orchestra. In that process, which I won't go into in this video will be long enough already. During that process, I ended up launching my blog and podcast, and that's become my career, which is crazy. About 5 years ago, I moved out to San Francisco and decided to not teach high school anymore and go full on with the blog and the podcast and related projects. That's what I've been doing ever since, and I feel so fortunate. But one thing that didn't come back into my life was practicing. That all changed in 2018, however, when I discovered an app called Modacity. I will link up to a video about this app. I don't know what it was about this app, but it got me back into practicing, and I found myself incorporated into my regular routine. I started to learn new pieces. I hadn't learned a new piece in a decade. I started to have a good time with my bass playing. But after talking with Susanna about Practizma and about what she was doing with this and just her outlook in music in general, I thought maybe I should give this a spin. And that was kind of a scary decision. I stared at this journal for about a month, not working on it, because it's 16 weeks. 16 weeks, that's 4 months. It's a chunk of your life. This was also happening in the early months of the pandemic, and I felt, I could probably use an attitude readjustment when it comes to how I think about music, how I think about the bass. So, guess what? I did all 16 weeks of this. I am embarking on a journey I have never done before. I don't know what I am getting myself into. We'll see where this takes us. I was interviewing a woman named Susanna Klein, who came out with a very intriguing practice journal. And I read through it and I thought, this is really cool. And the ideas are really well framed. And I've never been much of a journaler, but I just said at the beginning of the interview, Susanna, I'm doing it. I'm gonna do this 16-week practice journal. And as soon as I said it, I thought, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? So here we are. I'm embarking on this journey. Practizma, 16 weeks of efficiency, empowerment, and joy for musicians. I have no idea how I'm going to document this. I'm just going to record and we'll see where we go with this. And so let's take a look at this journal. There are all these guiding principles in the journal. It has been a very long time since I even thought about doing anything this specific with practicing. I have been using a wonderful app called Modacity, which again, I was not looking to improve my practicing particularly at all, but it was again an interview. I get myself into trouble with these interviews. I'll make sure to link up to my deep dive on Modacity. I really love it, and I've been using it for a couple of years now. It really has transformed my practicing, but this is kind of next level in terms of practicing. So we've got reflection and action pages. So here we go. Wow, I guess I'm going to start writing. Okay, I'm working on this piece. I'm not kind of stalled on this piece in some ways. I've really learned a lot of skills with this Nick Walker piece. It does a lot of things that I don't do well, and I've kind of gotten to the point where it's memorized generally. I miss a lot of things, like I miss these opening notes. I've got these opening notes. Well, that wasn't too bad, but like, why am I playing that out of tune? Come on, Jason. What I've done is I've taken and I've laid out the various chunks, I've got numbers. So I've got number 1, I got number 2, number 3, and these change over time. I guess this is my like I did a bunch of bass playing today. I shot a video, taught a lesson, I was kind of riffing. Maybe I guess I'll only include the thing that I think is actually practice.
I have a little bit of ugly duckling syndrome. Do you know what I mean? I was a late bloomer. I wanted to go into medicine and then ended up in a side-by-side experience with the North Carolina Symphony. And, you know, in a flash of an instant like that, was like, wait a minute, I need to do music. Wasn't terribly advanced. Had to hustle really hard, practice. I practiced like just obscene amounts in undergrad and grad too. And I always felt like I never did enough. Always felt like I wasn't advanced enough. And I loved reading about practice. I loved, like, you know, those geeky pedagogy books. And I think my favorite lessons with anyone, it didn't almost matter who it was, were when teachers said, well, have you practiced it like this? Have you tried it like this? Have you tried it like that? Like that is what always allowed me to feel like, oh, okay, I can do this, rather than lessons that were really more traditional, more instructive, like, well, you should play it like this.
Hey, it's week 2 of the practice challenge, Wednesday. I've made it to Wednesday. I think I'm gonna go outside here, sit down and take a look at this journal. It's been good, actually, working out of this. I have not traditionally been good at challenges, just in general, and so trying to do some of these also during the global pandemic doesn't really work. And then we've got this big bass summit coming up next week. So that's a long way of saying I'm not practicing a lot this week, but I am continuing with my notes. I'm taking notes every day and I'm getting back into that rhythm. And it's just keeping me on track a little bit more than I think I typically am. Something I'm discovering about myself, and it's kind of noisy here, I'm gonna go back inside. Something I'm discovering or remembering, I guess rather, about myself and my practicing is it's always like number 4 to 6 on my list. It's never number 1. That's just where I am in my life. You know, I'm seeing that as I'm reading these, you know, like I don't get to things until 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon. If it's 1 or 2 in the afternoon, it's okay. I usually get some good stuff done. If I wait till 4, I'm kind of going through the motions. Unfortunately, that's just sort of how my days seem to work out. But I am finding some value in just writing all of this down. It's having me rethink how I think about practicing. So it's good stuff, and I'm going to keep going with it.
My favorite lessons were always the ones that showed me 5 or 6 different ways of practicing something. So being sort of obsessed with practice as a practice, the practice of practice, I think that's been just my whole life. But the psychological elements of practice, my interest in that really was more or less accidental, and sort of realizing, I guess, that my complicated relationship with practice, I don't know why I thought I was so special, but I guess while it was just me, I was like, well, I'm messed up, you know, I'm the one who hates it but loves it, but everybody else loves it and I'm just weird.
Week 3 of Practizma, going through this journal, and I'm really enjoying it, actually. So we've got the journal right here, and it's gotten into my daily practice routine. I've just kept it out, and actually it's been fun writing things down, and it's one of those, again, I brought up Modacity a bunch of times as I've been recording this, but it's one of those things that's just kind of making me remember good practice habits, like what I should be doing in terms of practicing. And this week I'm doing some research on all the composers, which is kind of fun because I'm actually working on a bunch of contemporary based stuff, and so a lot of these composers I know, so I know a lot about them, but it's an opportunity to go to their websites and to listen to some of their other music and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the outside of the normal realm of thing for this week. The other thing with this week is we're doing this big bass summit online, so my time is just totally crushed with this summit. It's Tuesday right now, and Wednesday to Sunday is going to be this summit, so I'm going to get some good practice time in today. I got some in yesterday. I have absolutely no idea if I'll even touch the bass again. I hope so, because I'm on I think a 60-day practicing streak, which is the longest I've practiced consecutively in a long time. That's what a quarantine will do. So we'll see how this week goes, but I'm looking forward at least to checking out this summit, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to do my research on my mini recital that I've been creating with this journal. Actually, this journal gave me the idea to do this mini recital. I was thinking, well, I got to pick some pieces to work on, so I've got Nick Walker's Chorale, which I've been working on forever. I've got Xavier Foley's Irish Fantasy, which is a super cool piece that I've been working on for longer than I should be, considering how not well I'm playing that, if that makes any sense. And then I'm doing Adam Ben Ezra, Can't Stop Running. I've played that a few times in public, but I want to keep that under my fingers. And then I've got two pieces from my Discover Double Bass course, one by Craig Butterfield, it's called Decades End, and another by Donovan Stokes called Ensorceler. I'm just sort of creating a mini recital, knowing that someday I will actually play the bass in public again, and we'll need to get up there and play some reps. So I'm trying to make the best of this time with my practice journal and dig into those pieces.
Everybody has practice blues, and practicing is incredibly difficult. Like, it's just so full of paradoxes of be confident, be humble, be assertive, be questioning, all these things. So the journal specifically came about from a project in 2011, and it was just something that I did in my studio for a long time. My students since that time had to do a journal, basically, either reflections or prompts every semester.
I am into week 4 of Practizma. Last week was I think it's week 4. Let's look. Yeah, week 4 of Practizma. Last week was nuts. We had this bass summit, online bass summit. So I was monitoring the computer the whole time. I did manage to practice every day. My practice app, Modacity, actually, for some reason, I don't know, I screwed something up. So I've lost my streak in Modacity, though I actually haven't lost my streak. I think I'm at to 68 or 69 days of practicing straight, and I've gotten into the rhythm of using Practizma. It's a good amount of new, but not too much. I'm really enjoying the experience of actually writing some of this stuff down. And the challenge for this week is recording myself, and I have totally biffed it the first 2 days. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm gonna record today, start recording a little bit every day, which I should be doing anyway.
I got a little grant to take aspects of sports coaching and try to adapt them to the studio, essentially. One had to do with being more data-driven, recording lessons, and we went into the motion capture lab at VCU, which was super fun. The students had a blast. I did some pretty horrible things during that semester to them. I think now we can all deal with it, but I thought it'd be so great if they had the data of their lessons and could see themselves learning and playing every week. And I would upload entire lessons to the server and then ask that they watch the entire lesson and take notes on it and reflect on it. And it was terrible. They hated it.
All right, we're on week 5 of Practizma. Last week was the week after the online bass summit, so I basically just had a lazy week, deliberately lazy week, and but I'm back at it. So it's Monday here. It's July 6th. I think it's the 6th, right? Yeah, it's July 6th, and I'm doing something new in terms of my practicing, and I'm tracking it in Practizma. I'm taking Incredibly Useful Exercises, which is a series of incredibly useful exercises for the double bass by Dennis Whitaker, who's a friend and colleague, and I've had on the podcast before. And I am going through, it's a 16 volume series with a couple of additional materials, and I'm going through and I'm going to take one of those volumes which are designed to be done in an hour, and I'm replacing my traditional technique with that. I'm probably going to do separate videos about this, and I might do a video each week just sort of chronicling how this is going. And so some of this is going to be for Practizma, some of this is going to be for that, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a really interesting week.
In the beginning, it was just reflections, kind of like a diary. You know, what's been your proudest moment as a musician? When do you feel like you're in the zone? A lot of prompts that, of course, they're supposed to stir the pot a little bit and get people to realize, oh, wait, I am happier practicing in my whatever room, so why don't I practice there more, you know? But I realized that right away was a part of it. And then every semester I would kind of revise the journal. At some point I realized, you know, reflecting is nice, but acting is really how we learn, particularly for performance practice.
All right, we're on week 6 of the Practizma Practice Journal Practice Challenge. And you know, here's where I'm at. This is a good example of what persistence gets you, I guess. Maybe a small example of just me filling out this journal. But you know, you start off something and it's new and it's unfamiliar, whether it's a piece or whether it's filling out things in paper form, which is not new to me, but it's been a while. And then you get into it and then you look back and I'm starting to realize, wow, okay, you know, let's go back to that very first week, which was, let's see, June 8th. Okay, so here we are, July 13th. I'm supposed to be playing in Texas in December. I would not be surprised if that gets canceled for sure, given the pandemic, but I have to be ready if it's not canceled. So I'm working on a program. I'm taking these 5 pieces. There will be more, most likely, and I'm working to memorize them. I'm doing a slightly better job this week of filling everything out. Something that I struggle with, it's just journaling in general, and I go through phases, and I always feel better when I do it. And that's true just for my daily life, not just for practicing the bass, but this does feel good, and I really like the way that Susanna takes you through these different topics. Like chatter this week has been really interesting to write a little bit about. I'm probably not writing as much as I could, but I'm writing more than, I'm okay with that. I'm also realizing how horrible my penmanship or my pencilmanship or whatever has become over the years. I just don't write that much these days, and if I do, it's usually on an iPad screen, so I can read my own writing, but it's a little bit of a struggle. By any means necessary is the action challenge, and what I'm focusing on for that this week is trying to stop being so punchy on notes. I have a real tendency to just boom, get the note at the beginning, really punch it, whether it's legato or staccato or whatever. Every time I listen to myself on a recording, not every time, but often, I hear that and I am annoyed with that. So I'm going to work on that. I'm using Modacity, my practice app of choice, which I totally love. And all 3 of these things, Modacity, Practizma, and then Dennis's incredibly useful exercises, they all seem to be hinting at the same thing, which I really like, which is just being more mindful while you're practicing. And then Suzanne in particular, bringing joy to the whole process, which Dennis has, and actually, you know what? Mark Gelfu, who created Modacity, has that as a goal too. So all these people do. Anyway, let's get started.
I think we all really know, but we don't really embrace it, that we have to perform often to get better at it, you know? And so then I started doing like action things instead of reflection. Okay, this week play for 3 people. Okay, next week record yourself. And I just kind of learned what was meaningful, what was really difficult, what was easier. Some of the most meaningful prompts have very little to do with music. Week 7 of Practizma, and I'm in the groove. I'm
doing all these things at the same time that are kind of in the realm of mindfulness, or not kind of, they are. So Practizma, absolutely. I think that there's a tendency for people to get beaten down in terms of the joy of what they do, and I think that can happen sometimes in late high school. For me, it was definitely much more in college, but as I've seen so many high school kids and worked with so many high school kids, both as a former high school teacher and as a private teacher for so many high school students, I think this is what people have been saying for generations, but kids seem so much busier now these days than they were a generation ago, or when it was the late 80s and I was starting to learn a musical instrument. So I think that this really does seem to get you back to your why. And so I am digging it. Not everything in here fully applies to where I am in my life, and I think that would be true for anybody working through anything. But I'm a big fan of, and another one of my mindfulness kind of related projects is working through Dennis Whitaker's incredibly useful exercises, which is also 16 weeks. And so I'm on week 3 of that. I'm filming all my practice sessions, and that has caused me to actually think a little bit more mindfully about my technique practice, even in these 7 weeks that I've been doing Practizma. And then also my third and my longtime practice buddy, Modacity. This app is just like amazing at that, and I use that for everything in here. But even if I go back and I look like earlier on, a month ago or so, it looked like I was having a little more frustration in my practice. Since I've been doing Practizma, I've started to actually split my practicing up again, which I haven't done for years and years, but I've been focusing on having a technique block, and I've been focusing on having a repertoire block. This probably comes as news to nobody that that's a good idea, but that has been really wonderful. Instead of trying to cram everything into one block, I've probably memorized more pieces in the last 6 months than I have in the last 10 years. So I'm really just sort of soaking up new music and really committing it to memory. And I've been working on different processes for doing that, generally involving repetition and having it there, but trying it from memory, adding a bar, all sorts of stuff like that I can talk about later. But anyway, week 7 of Practizma, I'm really digging it.
I had a prompt early on that was write a letter to your former music teacher, to one of your first music teachers. And it was just like overwhelming, for the students in a positive way. And then I just put at the end, if you want to, you can send this.
Week 8 of Practizma. 8 weeks. And it's interesting. I've been really getting into doing more mindful things in general. I don't know why. I guess because I'm trapped inside and I have nothing else to think about. But I was talking last week about these incredibly useful exercises I've been doing. I've been doing these videos of those. I've been using my practice app of choice, Modacity, more and more frequently during the pandemic. And then I've been using Practizma to track my practice. And whether it's on an iPad screen or on paper like this, the act of just putting stuff down on paper, just the power that has to actually make things happen, to move the needle forward, it's incredible. And these pieces I've been working on, as I've been tracking, they've been getting better. Surprise, surprise. But actually trying, even if I'm kind of failing some of the time, which I certainly am, to move forward. I have also been getting into running. And I've been a runner to some degree for 23, 24, 25 years, something like that, easily. But about 2 weeks ago, I decided, let's just actually try to move forward in running too. Let's try to get further. And I have been careful, like with practicing, not to push into an area that is going to make me hate it, or injure myself, which could happen for both, or just try slow and steady improvement. And I've been noticing that in the pieces I've been working on as I've been using this practice journal. I've been noticing that with my technique practice with these incredibly useful exercises, and I've been noticing that in my running too. I did 10 miles. A couple weeks ago, I was maybe doing 2 miles. Now I'm running 4, usually walking 4 back. kind of maintaining there. I decided to go out a little bit more. And so I'm seeing so many parallels between working out, deliberate practice, and charting my progress. So I really am thankful to this Practizma journal for that. And we're starting to get into this cool area of the journal with these strategies, tips for being in the zone, and strategies for injury prevention. And those are all extremely useful. So exercise, sleep, time, limit your time on the instrument, alternatives to on-instrument practice, tapping, singing, conducting. And you know what? I do a lot of that work while I'm on that run, that currently 8-mile journey out of the house. 4 miles I work it. I'm running 4 miles straight. And then on the way back, I practice a little Spanish on Duolingo, try to do that every day. I just realized I haven't done that, so I have to do that after I get off of this video. And I think about the music I'm working on, the rep I'm working on, try to kind of sketch out the day. And so this reflective activity in this journal I have found really helpful.
The little acronyms about actually writing down what you practice or how you spend your time, I had that before because I just believed in it for myself. You know, I'm kind of a writer a little bit. But what I realized at some point is that students needed more guidance, what they should be writing, because some of them literally just wrote 8 to 10 practice or 9 to 9:45 scales. And like, I think it's kind of helpful to have a little bit, okay, well, is this detail work? Is this big picture work? Or are you having some breakthroughs? Or, when I ask students, well, how much did you use the metronome, this week? And usually I am just asking because I don't want to preach to something that's already, there. But, a little bit. And I'd be like, what does that mean? And they actually didn't know.
Week 9 of Practizma, of documenting my practicing. So I'm more than halfway through this, and it has been fun. I appreciate building new habits. I brought up, I think in a couple interviews, or at least one last week, James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list off and on for a long time, so probably you've heard of it. I will try to remember to link somewhere if I do, but great book, and it's all about just slow and steady progress. And so Susanna, for week 9, has you develop some t-shirts, and these are probably extremely lame for students, but they're what I'm thinking of right now. So I've made a t-shirt that just said steady growth. It's kind of been on my mind. And then for a badge, deliberate practice. So 2 things I've been talking about on these videos, or I guess this is ultimately probably going to just be one video, but it feels like a ton of videos. I've been getting more and more into just sort of accepting that progress is slow, but progress does happen if you just put one foot in front of the other. And I'm doing that in a very real way these days because I'm getting back into running. Oh, shut up, Siri. I've been doing that in a very real way, getting back into running. I never really got out of running, but I haven't been going far for at least 15 years. I've been doing 2 miles, 3 miles or something like that. And I've just got so much time on my hands with this pandemic and trying to improve my bass playing, improve everything I do in my life, just make slow and steady growth like James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits. So I've been pushing myself, pushing my mileage. Within reason, I'm 44 as I record this video, so I'm not a senior citizen, but I'm also not 24. And I know that muscles think they can go further than joints can a lot of the time. So I've been building up over the last few weeks. It has really been interesting to see what I couldn't do a week ago now being possible. And so I'm seeing that in terms of memorization. I'm memorizing these pieces that I have basically stalled out on, for long periods of time. I'm getting to the end. And it feels so good to make that breakthrough, to actually be able to get through some of these passages and pieces that I've been working on. And it's just so incredible to have those little realizations. So that's what's been happening in many areas of my life this week, and we're going to go over and we're going to practice some of these incredibly useful exercises, which I've been talking about. I'm now on volume 5 of those, going to record those this week. I'm on week 9 of Practizma. I'm on mile 8 of my North Waterfront journeys, so let's get to it.
For me, like recording myself, is really difficult. Still.
Right.
I mean, I'm 49. I'm preaching to my students all the time, like record yourself. It's super hard. So I mark it in the journal. It's kind of like a little goody two shoe, like I did it, you know.
Week 10 of Practizma. I can't believe I'm at week 10 weeks of journaling, paper journaling, which is something that I am enjoying. It's also something I haven't done a whole lot in recent years, but it's been good. And I have been consistent with it, but boy, talk about a setback last week. Friday, I had a faux performance, Susanna describes, and so I did the faux formance, actually is what she calls it. And oh my goodness, it was rough. It made me realize that I need to rethink a little bit of my preparation so that it holds up in the worst of circumstances. It was one of those days where I was trying to finish things up by 5. I had a lot on my plate and I knew that I wanted to do that faux performance, and I wanted to video it just to have some content, so that's gonna appear here. It's clips of it anyway. And it was some of it was okay. One piece I couldn't even play 8 bars for some reason. I just realized how sloppy my preparation was on it. It's a piece that's stretching me. Irish Fantasy by Xavier Foley. It's the sort of thing that when the pressure's not on, and I have all the time in the world, I can execute these various moves, I thought. So that didn't go well. And so I'm re-examining how I spend these precious minutes that I have, that I'm sure you have, not that many of, to devote to practicing. Let's just make sure that I'm using these minutes well. There's a section in here that I'm looking forward to doing this week. It's called The Social Musician, and it's who are the 5, what does she say exactly? You are who you hang out with, which I think that's true. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think that's a Zig Ziglar quote or something thereabouts. So she writes, let's play with that idea for this prompt. Who are the 5 people that you spend the most time with, musicians or not, and how do they influence who you are? That is an interesting question. The answer to that has changed a lot, especially since moving into this whatever it is I do now world and out of the public teaching world or freelance music world. When I look at who I am chatting with, who I am interacting with, I'm enjoying the answer to that question a little bit more than in those past 2 careers.
When there's a particular prompt that really asks you to look in the mirror, then maybe the next one is a little bit more social or a little more outgoing in terms of what it asks you to do. I tried to balance it, but nevertheless, it is hard, and it's hard to stick with it.
We are here on week 11 of the Practizma Journal, Practizma Practice Challenge. Let me get my journal here. Things are a little bit chaotic on my end because we got a wonderful new addition to the family. Not a kid, but a dog. Super sweet little guy that we got from the shelter here, 4 years old. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want him to wake up, so I'm in a different location. And so getting the dog this past Friday, kind of demolished, in a good way though, the weekend. So I'm getting back on track. Today is Tuesday of week 11. Yesterday I got into it, started working on my technique and my rep just a tiny little bit. Some of these challenges are really great this week. The Fast Ears Challenge, which is to hear faster, which is something that I've thought about a lot. So I'm going to get into that here this week. Haven't done that quite yet. I'm liking tracking my practice. I mean, it's amazing that I've been doing this for 11 weeks, 5 more weeks to this, and I have been enjoying the experience of journaling on paper again. I do a lot of journaling in my way on my iPad Pro, and after this journal, after I've completed and moved through these 16 weeks, I may continue this with my practicing on the iPad. I love the physicality of the paper. There is a digital version of this, by the way, but since I have the physical one, I thought it'd be great to go through. I think I might even write more if I was doing it in the digital, but that's just me personally because I just use that device all the time for all sorts of different things. But anyway, we're on week 11 I'm kind of trying to get back on track here. I feel like I've made some good gains the last few weeks and then had a crazy few days, but that's just how life is, right? So we try to get back on track.
What I've been doing, because I'm doing the journal right now, is some weeks I just take a week off. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not like something's going to happen. It's like people do exercise, right? We all fall off and right. Hey, I don't have the time, or I'm really just going through the motions. I'm kind of slapping in a couple times, whatever. But it does, I do like the companionship, I guess, of it, and just seeing, hey, I may think that I did nothing, but actually I did do something.
Week 12. Oh my goodness. 12 weeks. Closing out on 3 months here of tracking my practicing, having my ups and downs, and we got this cute little guy right here. That's William. And so the last couple of weeks have been a little bit challenging with practicing, also filming a whole bunch of projects for other areas of my life. So, but I've been continuing. I've been holding myself accountable as best as I can, and I do like the process of documenting things. It's kind of taking me back to the 90s when I was in music school and I was writing things down on a daily basis. I do think it's useful to be able to look over your week like that. I found that Fridays when I go back and look, it's just super cool. So, scratching, that's okay. We've got some recording related challenges here this week. We've got one that's called forensic double takes. So that's a cool idea right here. It's time to record at least a little phrase for each practice session. Mixing video and audio. Always do 2 takes of what you're recording. Record once, address things you're not thrilled with, and then record again. My app of choice, Modacity, the practicing app that I really enjoy, that's a great way to do this because then I can just sort of logically log, sort of clinically log as I'm listening back what I'd like to fix, and it just becomes a bunch of check boxes. So I'm going to try that out this week. We're here on Tuesday, back in the groove. It's been a little more challenging practicing and some projects coming due, but this is the beginning of week 12, the end of the 3rd month of this. So we are 3/4 of the way done, and I am feeling these new habits being built. Had the tool to record myself, but having that recording button staring at me has made me actually record and reflect a lot more. And it's like
That's
something
awesome.
Yeah, something that we should all be doing more of. And once you get into that habit of it, I found with conducting and recording myself, I just get you. That's just how I am.
If you do it regularly, you kind of, it's like performing. It's you never feel like great.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to record myself, but you certainly do get more in the groove and get used to it.
Okay, week 13 of Practizma. We're rounding out August here. It's August 31st, starting September tomorrow. And that I've stuck with this for 13 weeks, knowing me and the way I don't tend to stick with things. It says something about this system and doing it through the pandemic and all the other things that have been going on in my life, personally, professionally, from adopting our cute little dog that we've had for a few weeks now, to planning bass festivals, doing just a bunch of other projects, the podcast, all these other things. Practicing has not been number 1 or often not even number 5 on my list. That's just the way it is in my life here. And this has helped to keep you accountable. I really like it. I've been laying out this week, and I like that there's this strategic kudos in here for week 13, and it's just write down a win. So what are you particularly proud of at the end of every single practice session? And I remember chatting with Susanna about this for our conversation for my podcast months ago at this point. Just being kind to yourself and that kind of thing. I'm often not kind to myself on the bass. This has been a good reminder to do things like that, to think a little bit more three-dimensionally about my playing, and it's helped me to hold myself a little bit more accountable and feel like I'm making some gains. I mean, I look at this like, I'm getting through this. We only got a few weeks left, so let's get to practicing.
I try to say to myself, okay, I'm going to record myself a little bit, even if it's just one phrase every day. And it's mostly because to get rid of that psychological hurdle. The other thing I think that makes a really big difference, and I didn't realize how much, but is every once in a while to have some good equipment. I think that's because most of us are not, when we're recording ourselves, we don't have a good mic, nor do we have a good speaker.
So week 14 has started off with a giant heat wave, so that has been interesting. And today is our first break in the heat, really, but we're warming up a little bit. But it was over 100. There's no air conditioning here in San Francisco, so it's been a little bit rough. Practicing is always a struggle. I am looking forward to opening up that new page every week, even if I totally lost it and went off the rails, which I kind of have done the last couple of weeks practicing wise. I've been working, and I do think that the journal has helped in terms of keeping all that work together. Regardless of what happens in your successes, your failures, just being able to open up that new blank page and start, in this case, week 14 is great. I was just filming a couple of things for that incredibly useful exercises that I've talked about, and that's rendering in the background. Just took this little boy for a walk. So that's what's up. We'll keep trucking along. I think about my bass practice and I look at some of these pieces and, the progress seems so slow, but I've been recording myself over this year and a half. And I every once in a while I dip in and I listen to something from 14 months ago. I'm like, whoa. Yeah. And so maybe the difference between Tuesday and today for Spanish or bass practice or working out or anything is hard to notice. It kind of reminds me of that one of those old sayings, like people overestimate what they can do in a day, underestimate what they can do in a year, overestimate what they can do in a week, underestimate what they can do in 5 years. I think I'm sort of seeing that play out in my own life.
The incrementality of it is just excruciating, but it is, but I think anything we can do to value the actual process more, it is why we do it. I mean, on some level, we're addicted to practice, even if we leave it or it sounds like you've left it and you've come back, and it's like small, habitual, achievable, those three things. Mm-hmm. Fundamentally, we believe in it. We may sometimes lose sight of it and I think become really ruthless with ourselves because, we didn't get that audition or we're not making progress at the rate that we think we should. It usually is our own voice and our own judgment. I used to think it was about getting the job, but then even after I got jobs, I still had that voice. And then I realized it's just me talking to myself.
Okay, here we are, week 15 of Practizma, and it's a Tuesday. I've been using this also over the weekend, this past weekend. Weekends often I don't practice at all, but I've gotten into it. Hey boy! He's scratching in the background. So, and as I get into week 15, I start to think about what I'm gonna do with all this footage and how I'm going to continue journaling going forward. I've worked out a few things, I think, in the way I've been working over these past few years, particularly the last 2 years when I've honestly gotten back into practicing. This quarantine that's been going on for 6 months now here in San Francisco. It's kind of cool that 4 of those 6 months I've been working on this. And I connected with Susanna early in quarantine. Didn't realize it was early. I thought it'd be late in quarantine. And I just really appreciate getting into this and taking the time to do this. And I love a good project and a long-term project like this. I have many projects in my life, of course, like my podcast and blog and so many other things that I've been chipping away at and trying to just continue to get better at over the long haul. And I just had neglected my own personal practice for years and years. For the last few years, I feel like I've kind of been at this turning point where I've kind of been like this and maybe just a little bit like this. But would it be possible to go like this? And I think this has been helping to get me even further in that direction.
On some level, we are addicted to practicing, and whether it's a small amount or a large amount, and it is what makes us musicians. It's not actually our performing. It is the fact that we somehow find it is our meditation, and so when we get back to it, it's special. Like, I'm sure you're a more grounded person now when it's in your life and with your Spanish and all of that stuff. What I did before this interview, because I got really nervous because I was like, I don't know what to expect, so I got done teaching at 3, and I was pretty well set up, and I tried out the technology, and I was freaking out, actually. I mean, that's maybe a little overstated, but I had all this nervous energy, and I was like, okay, I'm going to practice.
Oh, nice.
Because just for 15 minutes, I just practiced for 15 minutes, because I was like, in those 15 minutes, I'm just, first finger, second finger, oh, is that shift clean? It's like a little meditative space. I was still distracted thinking about things, but it helps me.
Wow, week 16 of Practizma, and yes, a little bit of a different background. I was shooting another video. I usually don't get the booze in the shot, but oh well. Okay, so week 1 was, June 8th. So we're here closing out September. So I've been journaling for 4 months. That is an interesting amount of time, 4 months. So Susanna, nice job on picking that amount of time. It's enough to really implement a habit. And I can't help but compare it to other things in my life. 4 months is enough to make it automatic. If you want to get in the habit of running, put your running shoes in front of the door or in front of your bedroom door and have the goal be just put the shoes on. That could be the first goal. And then maybe just walk outside and walk back in. You can make it so dead simple. If you want to get into doing sit-ups or push-ups, just do one. I have to remind myself of that over and over because I break my own rules all the time. But I would highly recommend checking out Practizma week 16. It has gotten me in the habit of being more reflective. It has been interesting also because I'm such a digital person to have something paper in my life. Part of me resists paper, but part of me likes the physicality of something like this. So whether it's the print or the ebook version, I recommend it. It has made me think more deeply and more reflectively about my playing. And there's this element of kindness that Susanna has throughout Practizma that I think is really cool. Being kind to yourself and giving yourself permission to not have a perfect day or a perfect week. And I have had many non-perfect days and non-perfect weeks. The trajectory of my practice has been not continuously upward, but being more reflective about what you do on the instrument, it's maybe take a little bit more pride, it might be the right word, in what I do on the instrument when I'm playing the instrument. I really appreciate the work that Susanna's done on this. It's the product of a gifted and experienced mind who's really thought through what one can do to better themselves on the instrument. So yeah, 16 weeks later, good stuff.
There you go. 16 weeks, highs, lows, planning festivals, getting frustrated, writing a lot, writing a little, trying, failing. That's life. That's what it is. I hope you enjoyed this reminiscence of those 4 months. I really like what Susanna's put together here. Definitely give it a try. She's got a PDF version, she's got the physical version, whatever floats your boat. It's very cool. Also, check out her social media, check out her website, learn a little bit more about what she's doing, get on her email list, all the things. She's really doing good work out there and just very inspiring. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.